Welcome to Ham Radio Perspectives. I'm Tom, W-A-9-T-D-D.
That's the guy. I won't tell you if he's the dit or the duh, but at any rate, welcome. I'm Quinn, K8QS. This is a very unusual video. Tom and I started researching the history of ham radio years ago and started making a few long videos that are worthy of academic credit if you were taking a course on ham radio, but also fun. And one of them we did, which we're really proud of, is the history of the QSL card. Now, those are not used that much today, but they have a very important part of the history of the hobby in them when you look at them and the history of them. So what we're doing with this video, we went back into the vault and pulled out of that longer video just the section that has to do with the history of ham radio QSL cards. If you want to see our full video, I'm going to put a link down below, and that starts at the very beginning with SWLing and when AM broadcast stations used to send QSL cards and all that stuff. It's great fun, and we love it. And if you're a true blue radio guy, like we know a lot of our viewers are, we think you'll like that full version. But if you want just the version here that looks at ham radio QSLs, give it a look. So thanks so much again for watching, for considering all of this. Please subscribe to the channel. Keep watching, make comments down below. We'd love to hear from you. 73, I'm Quinn, K8QS.
I'm Tom, W-A-9-T-D-D, and enjoy the historic look back at ham radio QSLs.
Here we go, gang. Look
So
out.
let's look at some ham stuff. This is fascinating. Tom, this is the origins of the QSL card in a sense from QST magazine in 1919. You can look this up if you're an ARRL member. It's page 29 in the 1919 issue. From QST's cartoonist by the call of 8ADU. And he says here, here's a little idea. It's where I have it marked in blue. Here's a little idea. Run a suggestion that the fellows with long-distance ham receiving sets make themselves up a form for postcards, something like this, and then he shows it down below, and send each time a new long-distance station is heard. In this way, numerous relay possibilities will be discovered where some were careless and didn't notify stations heard formerly. Fellows receiving cards would keep them on file, etc. I used to do this and got a lot of thanks for it from the ones I wrote the cards to. So that's what he writes into QST. QST publishes it. Here's the sample of the information to use too. Heard your station, date, hours, audibilities, working apparatus. I love that, Tom. Apparatus I use.
Hey, Quinn, this makes a lot of sense for the American Radio Relay League. This would be important to make up an index of amateur radio stations and amateur radio listeners for them to support the relay function.
Exactly. Yeah, very important for the relay function. Who's who, hearing whom, have you verified it, sent information back and forth, so-called DX. Now, of course, what DX is, as we did in an earlier video on the history of DX, depends on what you consider long distance. It could be a couple of states over, or it could be around the world. So the origins of the card, they're 1919.
The ARRL. Now, I'm not sure if this is an official ARRL predecessor of W1AW, but it's from the same territory, West Hartford, Connecticut, which is very close to Newington. An example of an early QSL card, as you stated, 1923, just 4 years after that suggestion came out. And it gives basically the same information that we carry on a card up to today.
Yeah, we'll be glad to give you a description of 1MO if you want it, OM. How? Question mark. Best 73 from FH Schnell. Okay, and this is now, just a few years later, 1924. And you can see how the QSL card is developed. Here's this article. It's a whole article in QST now, not just a little letter to the editor. Amateur Radio DX Report Card. Oh boy, report cards. I don't want to go there if I'm a student. A study of the international fad The fad that 8UX started by Howard S. Pyle. He says here, the majority of amateur DX report cards have many faults which indicate a lack of thought in laying them out. Now, it is true that the American amateur is distinctly an individual, and that he will be governed first of all by his individual ideas when designing a card. Still, he should not neglect the fact that the card has a real purpose and should try to make it fulfill that purpose. So here's Howard Pyle coming in, bless his soul, 8FT, saying, hey, what's going on with these cards? There's some problems here. If we're going to do it, we need to do it. Let's do it right. So he continues in the article talking about things that are wrong with QSL cards, right? You look at things that are wrong to make things right. And he starts out looking at the DX wallpaper. And I can recall as an early ham in the 60s, Tom, when we used to talk about getting QSL cards as wallpaper. Well, he says, just for his own satisfaction, the writer would like to ask, quote, why plaster the station walls with report cards, unquote. It does not appear to be a really good stunt. The appearance of the station walls would be improved if fewer cards were used, say one from each foreign country, the most attractive one from each state, and perhaps a few especially interesting ones in addition. So he's blaming hams for making their ham shacks aesthetically unpleasing with all this DX wallpaper. And then next he says, the near funny card is a problem. The near funny, boy, he's being kind there. A growing number of stations, he says, exert all efforts to cover the entire card with collections of so-called humorous remarks. There are actual born humorists in the world, but judging from the cards, there are surprisingly few in the amateur fraternity, while the efforts of the would-bes are rather disgusting. Avoid cheapening your card by display of vaudeville humor. What a criticism. I wish we could find some of these cards. Hey, viewers, if you find some of these cards with all these this stupid humor on them, will you post them? Post them on our YouTube page here with links or on QRZ where you view this video. And then he talks about the showy card. He says, then we have the young fellow who has a burning desire for elaboration. I love this writing, elaboration. Right. He uses 2, 3, 5 colors and spectacular arrangements and whirls and flourishes. To do such things successfully is the work of an artist. If you have talent and expense means nothing, then it is possible to make an attractive card. But don't fool yourself into thinking that it only takes colors and curly cues. That is the way to make yourself and your station ridiculous to the fraternity. So this is from the article, September 24, getting at the art, the fad, the international fad, and the problems going on with those.
This is the famous card from Yuri in the Soviet Union, and it's a typical art from the proletariat of the USSR. It's got the dilapidation. You couldn't tell if Yuri was a member of the proletariat or if he was a member of the Supreme Soviet. All things must be equal.
Right, equally bad.
Equally bad. I believe when you were probably issued a license from the Supreme Soviet Radio Union, they also included this personalized rubber stamp for you to put on your to use on the inside of any cardboard box and create your own QSL. Quite innovative for the time.
Yeah, I remember getting so many of these cards, Tom. And the funny thing is they went through the bureau, and of course you had to go through Box 88 Moscow because these people apparently weren't allowed to tell you exactly where they lived. But the cards would be yellowed by the time I would get them.
Right, and that wasn't just a function of the slow bureau.
Yeah, so, and of course you only got one ink pad. So when that puppy started to run out of ink, you were in deep trouble.
That's when you had to renew your license.
Yeah, all things were equal, equally bad. Now, I'm going to talk about a master's thesis on QSL cards later, Tom, in a great little thesis. And the woman who wrote that card, or I'm sorry, wrote that thesis, looked at all of the cards that her grandfather had. That was the thesis about those cards. And this was one of them I found. Unfortunately, the image that she provided did not have the date. It was such an old card. It had fallen off with the paper on the right. But from China. And Tom, I looked at this card and looked at this card, the image there, and I thought, what in the world is that image all about? It's obviously a Brit living in China. W.L. Thompson, please. Listen to the BBC. But I tried to figure out, what is that image?
I also looked at it and I came up with a half a dozen different symbols for it. But the short story is, to me, he's monkeying around with radio. He's got a tube supported by what I would appear to be two monkeys, and that's all I could read into it.
Okay.
But yeah, he's monkeying around with radio. I don't know if that tube is an AC89A, if that's his call sign.
Yeah, it's got to be his call sign.
It's got to be his call sign. If it's 89A tube powered by AC. But a very interesting card and very typical of the time. He misspelled circuit, by the way. If you look at receiver, it's a 3-tube, 3 swore cut Navy type.
Yeah, so maybe 8NA. Some of us will help. Somebody out there who knows the history of this stuff will help us out. Maybe 8NA is the call, and he's running AC. He's got a tube there, and it looks like a little bit like a bomb, too. I don't know if I would send that out. And then these guys in the bottom also look a little bit like devils.
Indeed, they do.
So maybe he was making some statement about the government or something. I don't know. I don't even want to go there, Tom. But I like the power, too, either 50 or 500 watts. Man, 500 watts. That's a heck of a signal. Cheerio. The Little Print Shop. Tom, when you and I were first licensed in the 1960s, there was this little print shop company that produced QSLs, and they somehow got the lists right away when you were first licensed in the FCC database, and they immediately sent you some sample QSL cards. There were these and then a couple of other cards, and they would send you a group and say, do you want to order your cards now? Well, you didn't even have your license yet. Okay, so as soon as you, and it was addressed to you with your actual call sign. So you found out who it was that you were under your call sign now. I was WN9 and WN9 in Chicago, and then you could order your QSLs right away and get those around the time that you would get your license from the little print shop. But little did you know what would happen once you started getting cards, Tom.
You got cards that looked exactly like yours.
Yeah.
You were limited to about 5 or 6 different designs. Not very artistic, more commercial designed art. But at the time when you got your license, you were so anxious to get that license.
Yeah, it's so math art.
Right. And so anxious to join the fraternity that you got the cards, you got the sample pack, and you had your cards ordered before your ticket came. And as you mentioned previously, Quinn, that's when the disappointment came that you found out that everybody else on the continent had the same card you did.
Yeah. Mass art is that way. It's not personalized. So these cards were not personalized whatsoever, except for the fact that they had your call on, and that was good for some personalization for identity. But they were inexpensive, and you could get cards quickly, and you could have them and start sending them right out. It was lots of fun. So the little print shop really did a great job on this, and in their own way with mass cards. You know, I look at these, Tom, and I can recall which of some of our friends in Chicago had which card because I can picture their call letters on particular cards.
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, so the little print shop, and we get into special event cards. We could go on and on about this, and they continue today. Special event cards are collected. 15th Armed Forces Day in 1964, red, white, and blue. LI-2B, the Kon-Tiki expeditions there. Peru to Polynesia.
Right. If you're not familiar with the expedition, there's a book out on it, and actually a movie. Very interesting concept. Thor Heyerdahl built a balsa wood raft to sail from Peru to Polynesia. The two operators that are shown there, Torsten and Newt, were actually underground espionage operators during World War II that had infiltrated into Germany and gave back information to Britain on troop movements and so on and so forth. The expedition lasted from April to August of 1947, so I am sure that these cards were produced and mailed out after they reached their final destination. Torsten, I'm sure, was jonesing for that cigarette, and Newt was one of the radio technicians on board. They had a 7-watt transmitter with batteries and a hand crank generator, and managed to keep contact with stations in South America, North America, and Hawaii during the entire voyage. So this is a good piece of history here about a outrageous and courageous expedition.
Again, it shows us, Tom, how much culture and history are wrapped up in cards when you know the background. I really like their names in the wires coming out of their headphones. Very interesting art on this, so, and history. Wow, it scares me a little bit to think being out on a raft like that, but they were gutsy. Military amateur radio system still going on, of course. K4 USA, the Pentagon building, and the ham station. Apparently, from what we can tell, it was at the Pentagon building. This call is now issued to a regular ham, but back then, apparently, it was a station at the Pentagon, Tom.
Right. And trying to figure out the cryptical graphics on this, the two semaphore flags, the one on the left represents the letter S, the one on to the right with the darker background, the letter P. I'm not sure what that stands for, possibly security and peace. And the torch as a symbol is, of enlightenment. It embellishes every college, university, and high school logo. The antenna kind of floating over the Pentagon tells me that we're keeping an eye on you.
Yes.
We are everywhere.
And we've got a heck of a Yagi to prove it.
That's a fact.
So sometimes I think that torch also used with Veritas for truth. And so intelligence, getting at the truth. The royal wedding. What can you say? Happier times, an event. The Illinois Sesquicentennial, 1968. You and I had these cards. You could get them free, sponsored by Hallicrafters in Chicago, right?
That's correct. And you mailed into the Secretary of State, I believe, and they sent you about 50 cards?
Right. Yep. And you could write your own call on there. I think I used a magic marker, so I would really look cool.
All the information on the contact was on the back of the card.
Yeah, which is true for a lot of the really nice looking cards. The contact info on the back. Here's the Winter Games special event card. Tom, this is on the right hand side. I took this photo shot from the web page of an actual exhibit of QSL cards at the Hartford Community College. And that's the actual title of the article about this exhibit, Ham Radio Verification Cards on Exhibit at Hartford Community College. And you can look this up online. On the left side, under the Baltimore Sun 2011, I put the URL for it, QSL Cards as Art and Culture. So here we have from 2011, newspaper coverage of an actual exhibit. This card was pictured in that newspaper article is obviously anchored on the wall. You can see on the top left and right where the card is, the little anchoring, and there was probably some description of it. It was a widely used image on other cards, but probably the exhibit folks didn't know that.
And it's I find it quite interesting that a community college would actually have an exhibit on the art of QSL cards. It seems to be such an obscure subject for a university or college to delve into. I also kind of like the fried chicken up there between two ham operators, early microwave.
Okay, yeah, early microwave. You get your little Yaggies close together and high power, and you cook that chicken. What's the old expression with that thing they had on the internet? Lock it and cook it or something. I can't remember the expression. That cooker that they made online, or they made and had all the commercials on TV for. Something and forget it. Set it and forget it. That's it. Set it and forget it. So here we go to a quote from the article about the exhibit. The cards featured in the exhibit, hope to work you again soon. That's the name of the exhibit. Are visually striking, whether in its use of vivid color, drawings, or starkness and simplicity. What they all have in common, and this is the key point, each card is a piece of that operator's personality and home life. Very important information. And then this is from the curator, Kenneth Jones. Hams, quote, would create these somewhat fictional accounts of themselves. In other words, their image, their identity. A more utopian or idealistic sense of the self. And that's one of the big interests I have in the culture of the cards. So as we talked about early in this presentation, one of the functions of cards in creating your identity, your personal identity, is as an image, who you are, not just with your call, but the whole design and where you live and everything else. So let's look at some cards from the standpoint of the functions of QSL cards. Here's one from Greenville, South Carolina.
And here is one messed up dude.
Well, it's personalized, Tom.
It is indeed. The cigarettes on the floor, the half-eaten ham sandwich, and it's 1:25 in the morning, working that rear DX. Even the cat's tired. But you do notice that it's on 10-meter band at 8:25 in the morning. That's back in the days when the bands were open.
Yeah, 10 meters. We're going to do a video on getting ready for 10 meters because that's one of the spectacular bands. It doesn't require a lot of power and so forth. So here you have W4ILQ. And as we all used to do with our cards, because they were a little pricey for us, just cross out the address when you move and put the new one in. It was still legal.
Right.
Here we have more of mass art on the left side. These are images, looks like a woodcut on the left there, images that were widely used in all kinds of venues for different sorts of printing. And then, of course, personalized with the QSL card. Under your URRST, he doesn't have anything. I don't know if that makes it a legitimate card or not, Tom.
As long as the date and the time and the station he contacted were correct, I would assume that it would still be a legitimate card. But,
here is your card. Late, it says down below, but not forgotten. Of course, all of us tended to be late with cards, and as we got more into the hobby, or never send them out. These rascals who never send cards out. Terrible.
Right. And I call this the Jimmy Buffett card. He's having a Cuban cigar in paradise. Again, this is from Miami. He's laid back on the beach, smoking that stogie. Again, a piece of his identity.
And I think that, Tom, he drew this out, had it printed, and then each time he could fill in the two colors. He could even change the colors of the bird on each card.
True. I don't see a date on this other than 5/25. I don't see a year, but it looks to me like it's a magic marker.
Yeah. 40 watts input, 5.9. What band is this on? Oh, 28 megs.
Again, 10 meters.
Yeah, mega cycles. All right. And here we have Kessler Air Force Base crossed out. OMR 406. Tom, I looked this up. I could not figure out what OMR, maybe official military radio station number 406 or something. I don't know.
Could be. This looks like a generically produced card from the Air Force Base. Possibly W4KQW got reassigned someplace else and W5QCM moved in, and instead of having new cards produced, just crossed out the old call and plugged in his.
This was a widely used art for the card, Tom, with the vertical lines on the left, on top and bottom of the beginning of the call. So I don't know. I don't think it was officially a card of the base, although it could have been as kind of mass art produced. What is a lazy H antenna? I can't remember.
Lazy H antenna there is a horizontal element, one vertical element, and another horizontal element above that.
Okay. Portland 13, Oregon. W7 caw, Marie Clark. So she personalized this in terms of her actual call, which a lot of folks did. She also has got the tribal significance there, the ARRL membership, and all the information on the front of a card. Not a bad looking card. I don't know if I'd want too many crows on my wall. I'm thinking of a certain movie that scared the daylights out of me, thanks to whoever made that movie, The Birds. Maybe that was Hitchcock. I don't remember. But at any rate, it is personalized. And here we have another one, the KA3 GNU. Oh, boy. I don't know if I'd want a GNU on mine either, but it does personalize it. This reminds me, Tom, of our buddy in Chicago, Bob, WA9SHI. And he always used to say to us, boy, guys, if they gave 4-letter calls, you know what I would have gotten. And can you imagine? And Bob would have been the guy, too, to have a big brown piece of glop on the right side with his SHIT call. Oh, man, personalized.
This is a personalized early morning shot from Connecticut.
It's not a bad idea, Tom. Most of these that show the yard show the antenna.
Right. And this one possibly shows either a little barn or maybe his ham shack over there on the center right or center left.
Yeah, what it doesn't show is the night before when the snow hit, it took down his antenna.
Right, exactly.
But you never see on QSL cards shots of antennas that were down. Everybody wants to show them when they're up. Right. And we won't go any more into that. This is a fascinating card. I love it, from 51, Tom.
Yeah, W0BET. This card looks like it was definitely hand-drawn. The information text was typed in on an old Underwood typewriter. And this operator actually had his location very well determined on this card. I went to Google Earth and looked up Meade, Kansas, and the intersection of US 54 and US 160, and the X marks the spot is indeed almost perfectly situated. This ham tells me is a very inviting, welcoming ham, giving you directions to his house. Stop in, have a beer and a burger, and let's talk radio.
Yeah, it's great. So you wonder about sending this out to somebody that lived in another country, or somebody in a state that's a 14-hour drive away. But on the other hand, it does show where he's located, and he wants to get cards. He says on the left side, need UR card for worked all states. I'm thinking that this was reproduced on a mimeograph machine.
It certainly looks like it. You can see the smudge marks from the ink.
And he's a ham apparently with that call since 1927. Very personalized card, inexpensive to produce. Society of Wireless Pioneers. So here's a kind of tribal membership for identity, a life member. The Organization of Professional Brass Pounders, W6ABU. Dedicated, it says on the bottom, to the men who went down to sea in ships as wireless telegraphers, and all those who have earned their living pounding brass as wireless or radio ops since the day of Marconi. Did I sound like a newsreel during World War II?
It does indeed, Quinn. And obviously George is very proud of his profession, and is actually part of his psyche.
Yeah, and I would be too. It's a big part of identity. So here we have the high school or college yearbook QSL card.
Or mugshot.
Mugshot. I hope not.
I know they made license plates in prison, but I wasn't quite sure about QSL cards.
Hey, that's an idea.
Now I'm convinced.
So,
inmate W3KLE, Paul Kaufman. I looked up to make sure that this was a dead call sign, so I'm sure Paul's no longer around to protest. But be looking for you again, George.
Yeah, LUK. It almost looks like lurking. Be lurking for you again.
Right.
And his transmitter is a PP 812. 8 PP. Not sure on that one. Receiver SX25. Very personalized card. He's got his photo on there. Most of the earlier cards did not have photos. 1948. This card is spectacular, isn't it, Tom?
It is, and we both looked into this. It was so interesting. When I first saw this card, and I looked at it, I said, this looks like a Lego creation. This owner of this card, creator of this card, had to be an engineer. If you look at the upper right time, UTC, RST frequency on the radio, the speaker with the call sign, this looks like an engineering block diagram. And I went to his QRZ page to see what his bio was and didn't arrive with much information. However, I did Google his name. And it turns out Lloyd is indeed an engineer with very many patents to his name. And I know, Quinn, you looked into that also.
Yeah, I sent Lloyd a note because this was one of the most attractive cards that we ran across that appeared to be self-designed. And Lloyd told me that, in fact, he did design it, got a nice printer, and the printer did it up for him. It was some of that raised color. What is that process where you can actually have this printed so that the colored part of it is raised a little bit?
That's called thermography, Quinn.
Okay. And so he had that. And when you think about it, with the equipment, and to have that raised a little bit, and then his call there on the right for the speaker, this is a great card to send out. Lloyd told me that he ran out of cards, couldn't contact the old printer, but found a new printer for it. But the current card that he has doesn't have the raised ink. Still, Lloyd did a terrific job on this. I told him that we were going to feature this card in here, and we're happy to do so. It's almost a timeless card in the sense that you could use this for any equipment in the future just by making some minor changes on it. Look at this.
The license plate. The California license plate. And you found, Quinn, that there's a lot of states' license plate designs that we hams can take and personalize for our own use.
Yeah, when we found this N6 RVI, it got me thinking about the fact that I'm sure we could get rights from our states to use some of their license plate designs on cards. And some of them are very attractive. You know, they have professional designers using them. So I looked into them, and here's Utah. Imagine a ham call on here for Utah. And of course, you wouldn't have to have it separated the way it is here with the lettering, and you wouldn't have to have the holes up above, but you could use the basic design and then put the info on the back. I even like it on the bottom where they say Life Elevated, their logo here. And look at this Alaska one by the Alaska Artistic License, the Alaska State Council on the Arts. Isn't this a great looking QSL sample?
That's a great looking license plate and would make a great QSL. And I'm surprised that, I'm not surprised. I'm actually impressed that an art council would contribute to designing the state's license plate, and the fact that Alaska would actually promote the usage of a state art council to design their license plate. A lot of license plate designs are submitted by ordinary artists and citizens of that state.
Yeah, sometimes with a contest.
Right. But
So
this,
think about that, gang. We could start doing some cards. If you've got an attractive state license plate, this might work.
here's one from Kuwait, and this kind of gives a sense of Kuwait. The location, you've got the midnight on the oasis with the moon rising in the background and the hot burning desert sands below it.
I never liked these vertical cards, though this is an attractive one because I use those plastic QSL holders on the wall, and you couldn't put these in. They would be sideways, but nevertheless, it's an attractive card.
This is a F6DHI from France. This is a piece of actual fine art. It's a Van Gogh painting that the ham operator used to integrate into his card. Very attractive card. I'm sure the focus on this is not particularly good, and it would look like a great piece. Nice.
Yeah, we're getting into fine art style here. Yeah, typical photo. Try to make it an artsy photo. Use some of the icon of the area where you live if there is something iconistic, not the local bar or gas station, but something worth showing. I2ZLG and a ham art QSL, Tom.
A ham art QSL. I looked up the owner of this site, the KB. I'm sorry. I forgot his call. How I was thinking that he would be a K0PNP, excuse me, a professional designer. I went to his website and I got a bad gateway, so there isn't much information I could derive on this. It looks like it's done with a, gosh, I don't know, the sprayed art, airbrushed, very futuristic. These would go over well if anybody is interested in obviously Star Trek, Comic-Con. He's got several other cards here. I think you've got Quinn. This is looks like a copy of a Monet, one of the Water Lily series. However, it's in winter, but very well done, very artistically done.
Yeah, there are a lot of American artists that use this semi-realistic style.
This is N6ZZ. This is a sunset in Arizona. This is a photograph that the ham took and had made into his own personal card.
Wow, this one is really striking.
It is indeed. It's after looking at it, that it appears to me to be something that you would see on the side of a traveling medicine show. It's got a unique background with the printed circuit board, and the actual graphics on it is something I would see entering a small town, perhaps Antler, North Dakota.
Yeah, especially a western town. It's got a western kind of a belt buckle log cabin look to it,
Right.
if that makes any sense. Very attractive card. And here you are.
Here I am, and this is a story of tale and woe of a young amateur who had a really nice Peter Max collection, but unfortunately had to sell off most of it. But took one of the serigraphs, reduced it, photographed it, made my own QSL. At the time, I was a long-haired hippie with a ponytail, and Peter Max was my thing.
So QSL cards really function as a kind of cultural history. And there is a .io group for QSL. I say collectors in quotes because they're really, as I say in the bottom here, and Tom and I have talked about throughout this presentation, they are important historians and preservationists. So if you want to look at what they're up to, join this group. I did to look back at some of their postings, QSL Card Collectors Group, 54 members, 1,009 topics. Last post December 13. We're taping this here in late December, so there's a lot of traffic on here. Started in 18. Now, K8CX is one of these so-called collectors, but that are really historians. And this is, you can't believe this, Tom. You can't make it up. It's so spectacular. This is one of his collector cabinets, 12 drawers, 4 feet wide, 3 feet deep, 6 partitions each, 6.5 feet tall. The cabinet has over 900 screws holding it together, can hold over 210 feet of cards. K8CX has 3 other QSL storage cabinets like this. And you can see it's probably QSLs in those boxes in the back there too, waiting to be filed. But this is real dedication. Here's another look at CX's area for QSL cards. You see he's sorting them, got them stacked up. He's got some of those plastic holders in the back. This is the K8CX Ham Gallery. I put the hamgallery.com URL here. You can go to it for just this month where we're taping this in December 2020. You can see some of the postings that he's done. You can go back and look at others. Very important. This is maintaining ham radio history and culture. It's not just a matter of collecting QSL cards. Here's a sample card from the collection, a 1AKZ, Tom, from 24, or A, what is the call here? Yeah, it's
9AIO
is the holder of the card. And it's got all the info there, got the ARRL membership from Oglesby Avenue, probably an ARRL relay station in Chicago. Here's what it looked like. Also collecting photos. This is the photo that goes with that QSL that you can look at online in the collection. And isn't this a great photo, Tom?
This is a superb photo. It looks like it's in the garage or a basement. Light and jar batteries, or those are perhaps Edison batteries powering it with the candlestick phone. I wonder if it was an AM station.
Oh, I thought that was his cafe machine on the right there for making coffee. Okay.
Right.
So W8JYZ, another one, complete list of old QSL cards totaling more than 56,000. He's got a master file database. You can look online. He's got over 5,000 novice cards. OldQSLcards.com. He says the purpose of the website is to save as many old cards as possible and to get them back into the hands of the people they mean the most to. And in fact, I know someone who got a club card from an early club guy who started the club here in Michigan, a card back from him, and they have it framed up in the club. Here are some of the categories that he has on his website. The early days, you can see ARRL 1AW cards, radios we loved and wish we had again, face of the past, cards that make us smile, and so on. He's got on here on the right-hand column, the ladies of ham radio, not just women, ladies. This is women who are refined and of distinction in the hobby. And so we thought we'd pull up and look at a couple of those cards. Oh boy, look at this. Though most girls prefer to get hair waves, I get a big thrill out of airwaves. I guess Prince is the dog.
Prince is the dog. It's got an arrow pointed to him.
Okay, yeah. And Jean Polly, very 73, yours for DX. There's a station I'd like to have, the old Hallicrafters. Great.
All right, and this is one of those Kodak cards where you took a picture of yourself in your shack, information on the back of the card, and these themselves become a historical document as far as who you were, what equipment you had at a certain period of time. Look at the picture up in the corner there, probably maybe your 2 sons.
And a W9TO keyer up there. I remember, I think Jim was his name, from Chicago, met him. And a friend of mine in Chicago was really good friends with him and got one of the early TO keyers before that. Hallicrafters picked it up with the patent. And we did a video, Tom, that I'd like to encourage people to look at on the history of ham shacks, where we used a lot of QSL cards that show ham shacks, because it is important for history. Here's a him and hers card, Jim and Gloria, from South Charleston, West Virginia. Great transmitter there. Love that Viking. Now, QSL cards, we talked about the different functions of QSL cards, the importance of the different functions, identities, personal and tribal, to share memories, story, history, part of the hobby, to create art design, to earn awards, recognition. And here's a book I want to recommend. An unbelievably good book, one of the best books ever written about ham radio hobby, but I haven't met anybody else besides myself who has one or has read it yet. It's been around for a while. You can see the book here and the cover of it. The title is Hello World, subtitle A Life in Ham Radio by Danny Gregory and Paul Sayer. The publisher is Princeton Architectural Press. And the book is about the ham life of Jerry Powell, W2OJW, told through his QSL cards and related historical documents. And I thought what I'd do, Tom, about this book, it's so good, is just to show a couple of examples. So I'm going to put myself up here and pull open a couple of pages in this book. It's super heavy. It's really, really good paper. It'll last forever. This puppy is not going to yellow. So you go in here and you can see some of these QSL cards, but it's not just the QSL cards. It's information about the people that the cards came from. When this guy visited different people, he got cards from. He traveled around the world visiting different hams. And it's about that information, and it's about the people involved in ham radio. A lot of historical stuff about different information and close-ups of some of the photos that this guy took when he went to different locations. And so, as I say, it's a spectacularly done book, really spectacularly done book. And I was going to show one page in particular. Oh, and there's information about the hobby. Somebody who didn't know about the hobby could read about it. Here's a whole section on the history of Morse code. So this would be a good gift as well. I know I'm kind of late for Christmas season this year. The book we checked is still available. We don't get any royalties on it. We're not pushing it, to try to make money on this deal. But it is a spectacular book. What was the date? This thing is from some years back. I've forgotten now, Tom, what the date was in the thing. It's at least 10 years ago. It was published in 2003. Yet it really holds up. So this book, in a sense, does what we've tried to do in our little video here, but it does it through one guy's life, using his QSL cards and all of his adventures and letters and travel with these other people. Isn't that remarkable, Tom?
That is remarkable. And when you're done with it, let me borrow it.
Yeah, we'll do that when we
Okay.
when you're back from Florida and Indiana and all. We do a so-called eyeball QSO. Now, I also want to talk about this master's thesis that I mentioned. And so let me go back to this master's thesis. On the top, I give the website. This woman that did the thesis here actually put the entire thesis online so you can read it. The title is a little bit academic. It's Q Code Text and Images, a study of the social semiotic significance of QSL cards. Basically, it does what she says here. What is the rhetorical meaning of these QSL cards? I would describe the cards as showing the sender's ethos or their image in the form of the images and text, and that further the interplay of the images and the text forms a discourse with the sender and receiver. In addition, the reason behind the discourse or the communication is to assist in forming a community. In other words, the community of hams. Communities formed in part through the QSL cards. And Pam Cochran, who did this thesis, remember I had the card from her that was in the China card of the tube over the monkeys. Well, she based this thesis on the cards that she had from her grandfather. So it's really a neat little thesis, and you can take a look at that online. So again, we thank you for watching. It's a pleasure to make these videos. You probably can correct us on errors we made, fill in information. So if you're viewing this on QRZ, post it there. If you're viewing it on YouTube, and we hope you'll subscribe to our channel on YouTube, you can post it there or send us email as well. We would love to hear from you. We're Ham Radio Perspectives. We look at ham radio from the intersection of ham radio history, culture, and technology. I'm Quinn, K8QS.
And I am Tom, WA9TDD.
So 73, everybody. Thanks so much.